Recorded Books and One Click Digital present One Sunday at a Time, Book 2 of the Forever Diva series by E.N. Joy. Narrated by Diana Luke. Prologue. "You can't leave me!" Deborah yelled at Lynox, spittle flying from her mouth. She looked like a madwoman. She felt like a madwoman. Her hair was in disarray, and perspiration had beaded up on her forehead. It was a wonder she didn't have foam caked up in the corners of her mouth. She was acting rabid, like the victim in a science fiction horror movie who had failed to escape the vicious plague that was attacking all of Earth. She needed help. That was no longer the million-dollar question. The question now was, why hadn't she gotten the help she so desperately needed? Or rather, why hadn't she continued getting the help she'd once been receiving? For a minute there, she had felt that she'd been doing so well that she didn't need any help. There had always been the possibility that if she fell back into her slump again, she could just pick up where she'd left off in her treatment. Not only had some of her old traits reared their ugly heads, but she was far worse off now than she had ever been before. What had started off as a manageable snowball was now an avalanche. If Lynox didn't get out of the way, he'd be buried alive underneath it. "I can leave you. I am leaving you, and I'm taking the kids with me," was Lynox's reply to his wife's statement. So now, not only was her husband leaving her, but he was also taking their 2 sons with him? The rage that welled up in Deborah's being was uncontrollable. That didn't come as any surprise. She'd lost jurisdiction over her emotions a long time ago. At first, when her life had seemed to be getting hectic, she had managed somewhat. She'd hidden the darkness under the beam of an invisible flashlight. Outsiders couldn't see the darkness or the object projecting the false lighting. But then, emotionally, it had felt as if one thing was piling on top of the other. Anger issues, depression, anxiety, the need to be in control, compulsion for order. There had been times after researching the term when she'd even thought she might be bipolar. Heck, maybe she had been experiencing a little bit of all of them, which was a recipe for disaster. With her husband standing in front of her, a suitcase in hand, and threatening to leave her, it looked like the recipe had been followed to a T, and now the timer on the oven was sounding. It was done. Over. Finished. Kaput. "Why are you doing this?" Deborah cried out. "Why are you hurting me?" Deborah stood there, blocking the closed bedroom door. She'd already told Lynox that he was leaving over her dead body. Those hadn't merely been desperate words flung out of her mouth. She'd meant it. "I was hurting you when I was pampering and pacifying you, instead of making you go do something about it," Lynox told her. "So now what?" Deborah raised her arms and then allowed them to fall to her sides. "You call this helping me?" Lynox shook his head. "No, I call this giving you the opportunity to help yourself." Lynox slowly walked toward his wife. It pained him so much to see her like this. He didn't understand how a person's emotions and behavior could shift so erratically. Why was it that he and Deborah could experience the best night in the world, but then Deborah would wake up mad at the world? Or how could one little thing that threw her off schedule or was out of order send her on a rampage? Although Deborah loved her job as a literary agent and an editor, it was hard for Lynox to tell sometimes. Getting steady, good-paying projects was every freelance editor's dream. But as an agent, sometimes Deborah could get overwhelmed by submissions or needy authors. So when all her projects collided or piled on top of one another, she often operated out of fear of not getting done what she already had on her plate before another healthy portion was served up. When Deborah was working on one project, her mind would already be on the next one, and the one after that. God forbid Lynox or the children needed her to do something for them. She'd bite their heads off just for
Sample complete. Ready to continue?